More cabinet picks with Dr. Dave's commentary. Can Trump end Ukraine's endless war? Whistleblower warns FBI can't be trusted with background checks for Trump's nominees. This is Dr. David D. Schein for this special episode of Saving America with our weekly update. Houston, Texas. Deputy on duty and her daughter killed by a driver who's reported to be drunk. This is a little bit off our normal track, but I'm an advocate for always driving sober. This is a sad story. It's an excellent example of why it is so important. At 3 a.m., 46-year-old Catherine Hudson, an 18-year Harris County sheriff, was working an extra job providing security for a construction crew. In the car with her was her 7-year-old daughter, Casey. They never made it home as Omar Jose Alvarado, 23, crashed into their car and the vehicles burst into flames. He is charged with 2 counts of intoxication manslaughter. I was concerned about what penalty might apply. In Texas, this is punished by 2 to 20 years. However, if a peace officer was involved or 2 or more people, the penalties can be for a first-degree felony. As both apply here, I recommend the death penalty if found guilty, and if that cannot be applied, to be sentenced to life in prison without parole. People listening to this show are aware of my prior exhortations to never drive while impaired. There are so many options: taxis, Ubers, Lyfts, and just sleeping it off in your car. It is especially important as we approach this big holiday season. Today's show is dedicated to the memory of Deputy Hudson and her daughter, Casey. Quick mention here that Jack Smith did the totally expected and has dismissed the federal lawfare cases against Trump in D.C. in the appeal of his loss in the Florida documents case. Now, either the Fed courts need to slap the New York courts, or the New York courts need to get some sanity and do the same with even the more ridiculous state causes that have been pending. More cabinet picks with Dr. Dave's commentary. The heat got too much for Matt Gaetz, who withdrew from consideration for Attorney General late last week. It is unclear at this time if he will reclaim his seat in Congress. Remember, he still holds it. This is a good move for him and Trump. In a bit of a surprise, President-elect Trump almost immediately nominated former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi to be U.S. Attorney General. Bondi is an excellent choice. This puts another woman in the Trump cabinet, contrary to the nonsense about his administration not being supportive of smart, tough women. I expect that she'll do an even better job than Gaetz and will likely be more easily confirmed. With the heat off Gaetz, the media has jumped on Pete Hegseth, presently at Fox News. I've already expressed my support for him. Let's see how it goes. As Treasury Secretary, in a bit of a surprise to me, Trump announced Scott Bessent. I say surprised because he used to be the money manager for Trump's archenemy, Soros. He's a hardcore advocate for deficit reduction. That puts him high on my list. He would also be the first openly gay member of a president's cabinet if confirmed. This is also interesting, as another person who you would expect to align with the Dems has come over to the GOP cause. Parallel to this, Trump has picked Howard Lutnick, a longtime friend and chief executive of the financial services firm Cantor Fitzgerald, as his nominee for Commerce Secretary. He could also have been nominated for that Treasury slot. His special claim to fame is following 9/11, where Cantor Fitzgerald firm lost 658 employees in one terrorist attack. He rebuilt the whole firm. If you're going to send someone in to take on a tough job, he would be the person. His nomination is likely to be an easy confirmation, and I think that's a good move. Trump has announced the nomination of Linda McMahon as head of the Department of Education. She was the head of the U.S. Small Business Administration during Trump's first term. Her last name may be familiar to some, I'm told, because of her tie to wrestling. As I do not watch anything like that, I'll have to take somebody else's word for it. Because of the buzz about killing off the Department of Education, this position will get a lot of scrutiny. McMahon does not appear to have any formal background in the field of education. However, if Trump's real intention is to reduce government, having a business person in charge may help. The DOE is a badly flawed operation. As a professional educator, I would favor shutting it down and reallocating some of the pieces to other agencies and dumping the rest. The federal student loan program is buried in there somewhere and could be converted to another department like Treasury. State and local governments can handle relevant educational standards for the students. Let's keep those tax dollars at the local level and not send them to Washington, where they're cut into pieces and then bits and pieces are sent back out to the states. The fact that the Communist Teachers Union, which I hold directly responsible for the failure of the US K through 12 failures, already are complaining about her appointment, and that tells me that Trump may have nominated the right person. Now, a note of concern. Trump has chosen Dr. Jeanette Nijlet to serve as Surgeon General. However, conservative news sites report that she is along the lines of Tony Fauci with regard to the government's failed response to the pandemic. More critically, she's praised censorship of dissident voices on the topic of vaccines and other responses to the pandemic. I am not against vaccines, but I want the truth, and the truth comes out from hearing all voices. Whistleblower warns that the FBI can't be trusted with background checks for Trump's nominees. An article in the Washington Times raises yet another concern for Trump. An unidentified whistleblower inside the FBI has advised the House Judiciary Committee that the Bureau's Security Clearance Division, SecD, is politicized. Under Deputy Director Abate and Director Wray, it cannot be trusted to screen President-elect Donald Trump's nominees for top administration jobs. Part of the detail is that even though Wray was appointed director by Trump during his first administration, obviously there are mega problems in the FBI. In fact, I anticipate that Wray will be replaced nearly immediately by Trump. However, that's later. What about right now? The report by the whistleblower cited as saying, quote, under Wray, SecD refused clearances to U.S. military veterans, employees who refused to get COVID shots, employees who attended Trump rallies, and employees with conservative Christian beliefs. Continuing, the same FBI officials will be adjudicating President Trump's nominees. Deputy Director Abate and Director Wray will have unfettered access to any information that President Trump's appointees provide during their security clearance background investigations. The disclosures could also be said that the FBI could use anything from the background checks to lead information to state officials for potential prosecutions. Hopefully these people don't have any skeletons hiding in their closets, but I find it as an interesting observation to arrest governors who get in the way of Tom Homan. One of Trump's first appointments was Tom Homan for head of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. He returns to this position, which he held in the Trump's first administration. His record of success in closing the border and enforcing the Remain in Mexico policy is well known. Some moron Democrat governors have openly called for resistance to deportations. This includes Maura Healey of Massachusetts, Gavin Newsom of California, and J.B. Pritzker of Illinois. The resistance would most likely be a federal crime, and I call on the new DOJ to enforce the applicable laws. It is odd that they are voicing resistance, as this is the first approach of Homan is to remove 300,000 convicted criminals. How are these idiots helping the people of their states? Would it not be better to have fewer criminals in your states? Homan is also looking for 300,000 missing children as a result of the badly botched Biden-Harris border. Can Trump end Ukraine's endless war? I cite a recent article with this title by the famed author and commentator Victor Davis Hanson. Now that the election is over, a major question is whether Trump can actually end the Ukraine war. While the GOP has historically been the hardcore anti-communism party, they have been very concerned about the amount of cash dumped into Ukraine. Given the long-term corruption in that country, a specific concern is how much is actually helping the country versus the amount of graft. Hansen describes the war as the greatest European killing field since World War II, the cauldron on the Ukrainian border that has likely already cost 1 to 1.5 million combined dead, wounded, and missing Ukrainian and Russian soldiers, along with civilians. As most know, Biden giving Ukraine permission to use American long-range missiles to strike deep into Russia may increase the likelihood of a bigger war, or at least a much more dangerous one. Hansen opines that cutting off all aid to Ukraine now would seal the fate of the country. So likely that Trump would threaten to continue aid to Ukraine that is costing Russia so much in lost soldiers and money. Faced with that, an approach might be to establish a DMZ between Russia and Ukraine's borders and ensure European Union economic aid for a fully armed Ukraine that might deter an endlessly restless Russian neighbor. Zelensky could boast that despite slow help from the US, Russia did not take the majority of the country and caused huge losses for Russia at the same time. The implied deal would most likely include a deal that Ukraine would not join NATO. I personally oppose any deal that allows that murderer, Putin, to dictate to a sovereign country. And I hope that Ukraine will indeed join NATO at some point. New Oregon law, a threat to sensibility. In a sad commentary on the deranged leftist model, Oregon has a law to go into effect on January 1, which forces health insurers authorized in the state to cover transgenital surgeries and hormones for children, or risk losing their insurance licenses. Oregon's new rule also requires insurers to, get this, contract with enough gender doctors to prevent long wait lines. As with my prior disclaimers, I'm not opposed to adults with proper counseling deciding to have gender reassignment surgery. However, I also note that unhappy people who think they'll be happier as the other gender are usually still unhappy. Those are the statistics, folks. That's not just my opinion. But I go ballistic when children who are still finding their way are mutilated. In many cases, these surgeries are not reversible. This bizarre rule from Oregon's Department of Consumer and Business Services relies on the latest standards of care developed, get this group, World Professional Association for Transgender Health. This clown show operation refers to this treatment as medically necessary to justify expanding insurance coverage. Given the poor track record for adults, I do not support any insurance coverage for patients at any age. If some adults want to try this out, use their own money. Remember, health insurance is a shared expense model. If this money is spent by the insurance companies, everyone with health insurance will be paying for it. If you see a folded dollar bill on the ground, do not pick it up. This one was prompted by a report by Dave Basner citing a 2023 post on Facebook by Lane County, Kansas Sheriff's Department. Quote, earlier this afternoon, a citizen contacted the on-duty deputy to report they had found a folded $1 bill in their yard. Upon unfolding it, a white substance spilled out. The post goes on to say that the bill was tested for drugs. It tested positive for methamphetamines, but negative for fentanyl and opiates. The Lane County Sheriff's Office says it's common for drug users and dealers to transport drugs in folded money or paper, and it can be exceptionally hazardous if the drug is fentanyl or something like that. It is important to remain vigilant about potential hazards in your surroundings. Hey, it used to be that finding money was a good thing. This is Dr. David D. Schein for Saving America. Please subscribe on your favorite platform.